Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone first to the city of Hopewell and second to the Beacon Theater. We have a wonderful restoration project going on here, and hope you enjoy your night here. We have some nice streetscape we'll be putting in as well, and hope you enjoy your stay here. I'd like to introduce to us tonight Governor of Virginia. This is his 19th town hall meeting, I believe, on the subject, and he's spoken to numerous chambers of commerce as well. We've got a long night ahead of us, so I'm not going to hold it too long. Governor Tim.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. Let me thank Mayor Taylor for his introduction and having us here at the Beacon. It's good to be with you tonight. I also want to give a shout out to Stephen. It's his birthday today. And he told me that his wife has something nice at home, so he is not going to stay for long. So when you see him slip out, you'll know that he has a very good reason. But happy birthday, Mr. Mayor. It's great to be here. How about a round of applause? Let me do 2 bits of housekeeping, and then I'm going to jump into the meeting. First, thank you all for coming. Everybody in this room is busy. You've got plenty to do. You could be a lot of places tonight, but the fact that you're here means that you care about this transportation issue and good public policy in the state, and we'll have a good dialogue about it. First 2 bits of information for you. There are 2 booths set up here in the room. The first booth is a booth here with the yellow tablecloth. That's the Constituent Services Office. If you have an issue with state government or something that you want to get a question answered or have somebody follow up on a challenge that you have, please go over to the Constituent Services booth at the end of tonight, and we'll be glad to help. I'm going to open this up for questions at some point, but sometimes someone will have a question that they don't ask in front of a room, or there might be too many questions. My voice may run out before all the hands have been called on, so Constituent Services is here to take your questions, and we'd love to do that. In the back corner with the blue tablecloth is some folks from the Treasury, the State Treasury Office, from the Unclaimed Property Division. 1 in 7 Virginians, usually unbeknownst to them, has the state holding unclaimed property. So a lawsuit got settled 10 years ago and the check never found its way to you, or a tax refund or something like that. If you go and check with the Treasury office there, some of you will likely walk away tonight with a check coming in the mail to you. When I got elected governor, I went to the Treasury office to visit. They said, "Governor, do you have unclaimed property?" I said, "I don't even know what that is." They checked and found out that the state owed me $700. And it was right before Christmas when I was there, so it was perfect. So anyway, you might just check that in the Treasury Division. During these 19 town hall meetings, you guys have probably returned $50,000 or so to citizens. In fact, I'll say this week, the last town hall meeting we had was in Loudon at a school. We found out that about $7,000 was owed by the state to the Loudon school system. That they were able to, get the check, or at least get it processed that night to come their way. So, thank you all for coming, and we'll jump right in. I want to acknowledge a member of the House of Delegates, Frank Hall, who's here. Frank, I'm so glad that you're with us tonight. And I didn't see other... Oh, and Joe, and where's Joe? Where's Joe? Oh, hey, Joe Morrison. Joe. Hey, there's Chair. We're glad to have Joe here. Okay, transportation. This is an issue that I've been kind of working on / beating my head against a wall on since I got to be governor in January of 2006. When I ran for governor, I said the most important issue facing Virginia is education, and I continue to believe that. How we educate our people is going to be the most important thing to how successful we are. But I also said the most urgent issue facing Virginia is transportation, because it's been left unaddressed for a long time. Before I was elected governor, the last time the legislature really dove into and made significant changes to funding our transportation infrastructure was in 1986. And as you know, if you kind of set things and then don't really address them for that long, particularly something important like this, the situation degrades and creates some real challenges, and that's what we're facing right now. I called the legislature into a regular session and 2 special sessions in 2006 to take up what I had put on the table as a transportation plan, and none was passed by the legislature. In 2007, the legislative bodies came together at the end of the session and passed a plan quite a bit different than the one that I had proposed, but I said, well, okay, let's try to work and make this happen. But unfortunately, since that was passed, much of that plan, not all of it, but much of it has either been repealed or struck down by the Virginia Supreme Court. So the dollars that the legislature said, okay, we need to put into transportation have not come to pass, at least to the degree the legislature wanted. So in 2008, I'm calling them back, the legislature in special session a week from today. I put a plan on the table that I rolled out about 6 weeks ago saying, look, here is the plan that I think will fix this problem, and if you can improve on it, feel free. Make it better, adjust it, modify it, amend it, etc. But don't do nothing. Well, so far I've heard from a lot of people, we don't like the governor's plan, but there's not another plan yet out on the table 4 or 5 weeks later. Now, I know there will be plans introduced, but my request to you in local government and sheriffs and law enforcement and citizens is, you elect us for a reason. That reason is to solve problems. We should come into this session and solve it, rather than kick it down the can, kick the can down the road to next year, and next year, and next year. Because I think that's a test of our seriousness in directing the state and solving tough issues. That's what you'd like us to do. Let me talk about a couple of things. I want to talk about the magnitude of the need that we have. I want to talk about taxes and fees. What do we pay right now for transportation? How does that compare to other states? And then I want to tell you about the plan that I propose and why I have proposed it as I have. So here you go. First, the first issue that we have is maintenance. That is the big issue, and it's in some ways one of the more challenging ones. A couple things about Virginia. Virginia has the third largest state-maintained road system in America in terms of the number of miles. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. A lot of infrastructure. But more infrastructure means more maintenance costs. The system is not just large, it's growing. We add about 250 miles a year to the state's road system. Every time a local government approves a subdivision and roads are built, as soon as they're built and open, the state takes over maintenance responsibilities, at least for roads and counties. So the system not only is big, it's growing, and then it's also aging. And as infrastructure ages, just like as I age, a little more maintenance is required. Let me talk to you about aging and some of this infrastructure. So if you don't know the answer to this, you're entitled to shout out a yes. One piece of infrastructure that we have to maintain that's very expensive is bridges. So how many bridges do you think the state of Virginia maintains statewide? 1,600. So how about another guess?
2,000.
2,000? Give somebody go north of that. 10,000. It's 20,000. There are 20,000 bridges that the state maintains. Sometimes you drive over a bridge and don't even know. I mean, it's a little culvert or a creek, but it's a piece of infrastructure. The average age of a bridge in Virginia is 47 years old. Now, that's average, so that means, half of them are older than that. And when bridges or tunnels get to about age 50, you have to start to really plan some significant repairs. 1,700 of our 20,000 bridges are listed by VDOT as structurally deficient. What that means is they were built at a time when the vehicles weren't as big as they are now. So they were built to standards that are very different than the vehicles that we now have. And so if a bridge is structurally deficient, it doesn't mean it's going to collapse tomorrow. But it does mean we have to inspect it more often. We have to put weight limits. Usually if you see a weight limit on a bridge, it was because it was built at a time before these heavy vehicles, and we have to put weight limits to make sure that nothing bad happens. And we also have to have a plan to start to replace them. Weird coincidence. I was in Radford 2 weeks ago doing a town hall meeting. The very day I was there, a state bridge collapsed. We have a bridge in Giles County, 15 miles from where I was doing the town meeting. A small bridge, built in 1932 in rural part of Giles County. It had an 8-ton weight limit on it. We were building the replacement bridge right next to it, and there's a VDOT crew there working on this replacement bridge. A guy with a cement truck thought, well, 8 tons, I could probably make it. Well, he was about 16 or 20 tons. He got out of the bridge and the thing collapsed. He wasn't badly hurt. But that's just an example of the kinds of infrastructure challenges that we have. 20,000 bridges that are that old, they need to be replaced and repaired. So maintenance is, first, it's a large system. Second, it's an aging system. Third, it's a growing system. And then the last part about maintenance that's tough is that maintenance costs are going up. I don't know, raise your hand if you deal with the construction industry at all in any way, home or commercial. Got a couple folks in here. Okay? So you're seeing what's happening to any material costs, cement, iron, asphalt, steel, all that's going up. Even in the low inflation time, that had been going up because of competition. So the cost to maintain and repair increases. Last bullet here. Maintenance reduces our available funding for needed improvements. In transportation in Virginia, we kind of have two budgets. There's a maintenance budget to maintain what we have, and then there's a construction budget to build the new stuff. Any significant improvement comes out of the construction budget. Beginning in about 2000, at the end of the Gilmore administration, the legislature and governor realized that the money we were putting into maintenance wasn't enough to maintain the system. And so they gave the executive permission, when the maintenance monies aren't sufficient, to go into the construction budget and pull money into maintenance. We call that the maintenance deficit. It is the amount of money we have to pull out of the construction fund to do a base level job of maintaining the system that we have. That maintenance deficit pulls money out of needed improvements. And I'm going to show you a slide about that in this area later in the presentation. But statewide, in the year that begins July 1st, we will pull $375 million out of the construction budget to fill up this maintenance hole. If we don't do anything, that maintenance hole will be $575 million by 2014. It's not the best way to maintain the system to have to cobble together the maintenance monies by pulling money out of the account, but it's definitely not the right way to have new improvements to the system when you cannibalize the construction budget to fill in the maintenance hole. Next slide. Additional maintenance. Let's see. Oh, here's a magnitude. This slide will show you the magnitude of kind of the maintenance problem. It shows across time how much money was in the maintenance budget and how much money was in the construction budget. In 1988, you'll see the red bar is the bigger bar. We were spending more in construction than maintenance. If we don't do anything by 2019, almost all the money is going to be maintenance. Very little of it will be construction. We'll have less than $500 million statewide. 7.5 million people, 134 cities and counties. We'll have a very little bit of construction money. And the reason is we'll have to pull more and more in to the maintenance budget just to have the basic maintenance that we need on the existing roads and bridges. There's a safety aspect to maintenance as well. Last year, for the first time in many years, more than 1,000 Virginians died on the road. Now, a lot of road deaths are because of bad behavior, not wearing seatbelt, drinking. But there's also a direct link between road conditions and maintenance and safety. I was in Charlottesville a couple of weeks ago, and the day I was there to talk about transportation, the newspapers were filled with stories about this young lady just about to graduate from Albemarle High School who was killed in an accident out on Route 29 at an intersection that had been slated for maintenance for quite a while. It's an intersection that had some visibility and sightline problems, and a tractor trailer had run into her and killed this young lady. Would that have not happened if the road had been properly maintained? I can't say that one way or the other, but we all know, law enforcement and all of us have an understanding here that maintaining your roads and bridges to an appropriate standard does have an impact on safety. Roads impact safety in other ways too. Emergency response times. If you live in a part of the state that has congestion, Northern Virginia or Hampton roads, what you see is difficulty getting an ambulance to somebody having a cardiac incident makes a big difference. I was on the ambulance authority in Richmond when I was mayor. Just a 1-minute difference in getting an ambulance to somebody having a cardiac incident has a huge difference in the likely outcome when an EMT squad gets there. So maintenance and safety issues impact kind of public safety priorities. And so what we need on a statewide basis is the ability to maintain our roads that we have, not take money out of the new construction budget that we need for key priorities. Next slide. Let me tell you something about what's happening to transportation revenues in Virginia right now. We have the way we do transportation planning is through an organization called the Commonwealth Transportation Board. There's one representative from each of the various districts in the state. Hopewell is in the Richmond district, which is a large geographic area that I'll show you on the map kind of toward the end of the slide. And we do projects in each area, maintenance in each area, and we do it on the basis of a 6-year plan. Once a year, the board comes back and reforecasts the 6-year plan, and they decide what we can do going forward. And if the 6-year plan increases, we can do more projects, and if it decreases, we take projects off the list. This is what's happening right now. The Commonwealth Transportation Board in April did a draft of the reforecast of the 6-year plan, and they took $1.1 billion of revenue out of the 6-year plan going forward for 3 reasons. Well, really for 2 reasons. big chunks of the revenue that the legislature just passed last year as part of that transportation bill were either repealed by the courts or repealed by the legislature. And so a lot of money had to be taken out of the 6-year plan because of that. And second, we're seeing some of our revenues, gas tax receipts, reduce because people are driving less at $4 a gallon than they were before. I saw this statistic in the newspaper that kind of stunned me. In March of 2008, the American public drove like 11 billion fewer miles than in March of 2007. As gas prices go up, people drive less. And then as people drive fewer miles, fewer gas tax revenues come in. And then you go in the red. So at a time when our state is growing, we are a growing and thriving state. We're listed the best state for business in the United States. Our economy is relatively strong, even in a tough time compared to others. Our state is growing, but we are reducing our transportation budget dramatically because of those various effects. Next slide. Let me talk about the least favorite topic I'm going to talk about tonight, which is taxes and fees. Hey, if we want transportation infrastructure, we got to be willing to pay for it. So let's talk about how we do pay for it and how that compares to what other states have. Because at the end of the day, this is kind of a question about, are we willing to invest in what we want, or do we kind of want a free lunch, which you don't get, obviously, especially with transportation costs being so significant. So here's where we are in Virginia, and I'll show you a couple of slides. We're 5th in per capita income of the 50 states. And that doesn't mean everybody's doing well or every region is doing well, but the state overall has pretty high income, 12th in population. We're 32nd in state and local tax burden, and 39th in taxes as a percentage of income. On the spending side, we're 36th in spending, governmental spending as a percentage of income. And we rank near the bottom when it comes to the percentage of our income that we put into transportation. Most states fund transportation with the same 3 revenue sources. So I want to show you how we stack up compared to other states. The revenue sources are these. Motor vehicle sales tax, the sales tax you pay on a vehicle when you buy it. The retail sales tax you pay on everything else, and the gasoline tax. Those are the 3 that we use to fund our system. So here's how Virginia stacks up. Motor vehicle sales tax rate. You know, if you buy a computer or a big pen or clothes in Virginia, you pay a 5% sales tax. We don't have we have a drastically reduced sales tax on food and medicine, but the general sales tax is 5%. The difference, though, is automobiles. We charge a 3% sales tax on automobiles. So we set the sales tax on autos 2% less than the sales tax on everything else. And as you'll see, compared to the rest of the nation, the U.S. average is about 4.6%, and we set our sales tax 1.6% below that. The states in blue are the states that have auto sales tax less than 3. Go back to auto sales tax. And you'll see we're in the bottom 10 states in the auto sales tax. Just order of magnitude. If we set the auto sales tax just at the national average, 4.6% instead of 3, that would be about $300 to $400 million a year of revenue that we would have for transportation that we don't have because we've set the tax rate lower. That's auto sales tax. Next one, the regular sales tax. As you know, the regular sales tax in Virginia is 5%. The national average is 6%. Most of these states in red and yellow have sales taxes significantly higher than Virginia. The blue states, or the low sales tax states, there's about 6 or 7 of us that have sales tax at 5% or below. If we just had a sales tax at the national average, 6%, what would that mean? It would mean that we have about another $1.1 billion to $1.2 billion a year for transportation. We set the sales tax below the national average. Finally, the big one, the one that is really the one that we lean on the heaviest for transportation, and every state does, is the gas tax. Now, this slide is the combined local, state, and federal gas tax. The federal gas tax is the same everywhere. So let me give you the combined, and then I'll just tell you the state. We are at combined 37.7 cents, 38 cents a gallon gas tax, but the national average is 46%. The difference between Virginia and the national average is because our state tax is lower than other states. We're at 17.5 cents in Virginia per gallon gas tax. That's been flat since 1986. Other states average about 26 cents. What if we had a gas tax that was just equal to the average of other states, the national average, That would be about $400 to $500 million a year additional we would have for transportation. So basically the kind of message is this: in the three big revenue sources that we rely on, we set them all significantly below the national average. And the way I would kind of describe it is this: we could have an A system on an A revenue stream, or a C minus system on a C minus revenue stream, but you can't have an A system on a C minus revenue stream. We just have to decide, do we want a good system or don't we? And if we do, we just got to be willing to pay for it. Here's how it all combines. Highway spending is a percentage of income. If you put all those, taxes together, the monies that we use for transportation, the U.S. average is they, spend about 1.3% of income on transportation. Virginia's spending 1.1%. We're spending significantly less. And again, you'll see there's about 8 or 9 or 10 states that are in blue that are with us spending less. So that's kind of what this issue is about. It is about if we want solutions, we got to be willing to pay for them. And that's why this debate is a challenge. Before I tell you about my proposal, let me say a couple of things about it's not just about money. There are other things too. First, part of the solution that the legislature has worked on pretty heavy in the last couple of years is not just about money, but it's about better land use decisions. In Virginia, for a long time, we followed a planning process that wasn't that helpful, where local governments made the land use decisions, but the state did transportation planning. And really, they should be done with more coordination. In recent years, the legislature, in a bipartisan way, have put a number of items on the table to try to better stitch together local land use plans with the state's transportation planning. And that is very, very important. And I commend the legislature for doing that. We started doing it. There's more that we can do. But that is what we need to do, and it's not just about money. Second, we have to make sure that we use existing money well. Let me talk to you about VDOT. When Governor Warner was elected in 2002, he was nervous about VDOT and VDOT's performance. So he commissioned an audit of VDOT and found, to his dismay, to all citizens' dismay, that at the time he was governor, VDOT was only on time in their projects about 22% of the time. And they were only on budget in about 50% of the projects. Now that was an abysmal record. And it was, embarrassing. But we've done a lot of work over the last 6 years to change it. Right now, VDOT's on-time, on-budget percentage is greater than 85%. From the 20s and the 50s to greater than 85. And as we've been doing that, we've reduced the size of VDOT by 2,000 people because we wanted to put the money into, like asphalt and steel rather than into salaries. But there is a balance there. You have to hit the right balance to have enough people to do the work or supervise the contractors, etc. But we've done a lot to reduce the size of VDOT and improve efficiencies and performance. And we're not done. We've got to wake up every morning and try to do better. But we've come a long way in the last 6 years. Finally, one other thing that is about money, but it's not about taxes and fees. You'll sometimes hear legislators say the way to solve this is through public-private partnerships or concessions or tolling, something other than taxes. And we definitely believe in Virginia that's part of the answer. This is a map of the state that shows roads in different parts of the state where we are currently either they're in use, like the Pocono Heights Parkway or the Dulles Greenway, or they're on the drawing board. We've got contracts that we're putting in place, hot lanes on the Beltway, on around DC or on I-95 down to Fredericksburg, or we're seeking partners. 460. We'd like to build a more interstate quality Route 460 to help with movements of traffic into and out of Hampton roads. And these are projects where toll revenues will be part of the package. So it's not just taxes and fees that you use to finance these things. You could use toll revenues, but there's some things that tolls don't really help you do. They don't help with maintenance, really. It's hard to put a toll booth on a road that everybody's used to driving on for free and suddenly put a toll booth on. People don't like that. So for something new, it tends to be okay, but for existing infrastructure, it's tough. All right, let me get into my proposal. And again, I'll stress that as I have made this to the legislature, I've said, if you want to improve it. Do better. Tell me, Governor, you're wrong, but don't stop there. Just say, what is the thing that you will do will be better. I have proposed a plan that's got 3 pieces to it. Each has a cost. Each will accomplish an objective. Let me tell you about each piece and why I have proposed it as I have. Safety first, regional improvements, and then transportation change. Okay, safety first. This is back to that maintenance problem I was telling you about. The first thing we should do is fill in the maintenance hole that we have so that we can reliably maintain and keep our infrastructure safe, and so that we don't have to keep taking money out of the transportation construction budget. So, this issue of deaths on the highway, repair and replace aging bridges, something I didn't mention earlier, but it is a safety issue of some importance. We don't have enough evacuation capacity out of Hampton Roads in the event of a major hurricane. And that's going to happen. It might not be this season, it might be 10 years from now, it might be 30 years from now. But we know we need more east-west capacity out of Hampton Roads, especially as that region grows, if we're going to keep people safe. What the governor has to do right now, 1.6 million people, 700,000 of the folks who live in Hampton Roads are vulnerable to significant storm surges in the event of a Category 3 hurricane. So the evacuation plans are, how do you get 700,000 people out of Hampton Roads? And we just don't have the road capacity to do it. That's part of what we have to do. So how do I propose to deal with this maintenance deficit? To fill it in so that we don't keep cannibalizing the construction budget. I propose to do two things. Here is the cost to fix our maintenance system. I propose to increase the annual fee for registering a vehicle in Virginia by $10. So if you have a vehicle, it's $10. If you got three, it's $30. That would all go into the maintenance fund. The second thing is I propose to increase that auto sales tax. Remember, we're at 3%. National average is 4.6%. I propose increasing it from 3 to 4% when you buy a vehicle. If we do those two things, and we put all the money dedicated into maintenance, then we will have enough to solve our maintenance deficit. At least through 2014, and maybe beyond. The farther out you go, the harder the projections get, But we would be able to fix our maintenance deficit, have reliable maintenance funds, and not have to cannibalize the construction fund. This is what that would do. I showed you an earlier slide about how the maintenance deficit grows and grows. I said in fiscal year 09 it would be $375 million. It grows to nearly $600 million in fiscal 14. If we put in place what I just told you, the $10 and the 1% increase in auto sales, we actually end up with a little bit of a maintenance surplus until 2014, when we might be slightly negative, but it would be $50 million instead of $600 million. And we would be able to have the money we need to reliably maintain roads and bridges. So that's the first piece. Let's fill the maintenance deficit. Why did I say let's fill it with the $10 in the auto title tax? Well, I described earlier that on the auto title tax we're less than the national average and less than what most other states do. But there's another reason I proposed those two revenue sources. Last year, there was a bill that was passed by the legislature that the Speaker in the House was the patron of, House Bill 3202. And in that bill, there was a $10 registration increase and a 1% increase in the auto title tax that virtually the entire legislature voted for as part of the regional plans that the court later struck down on a technical reason. So my reasoning was, rather than ask the legislature to vote on new and different taxes, why not just ask them to vote on exactly what they just voted on a year ago? If they were willing to vote on it in the House, for example, 90 to 10 a year ago, gosh, why wouldn't they vote on it again? So that's why I proposed the maintenance plan in the way I did. Second piece, I'll just try to be quick on this. Part of the plan last year that passed were regional plans in Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads. Those were the plans that got struck down. But the idea was, and this was not my idea, I actually had a plan originally, just a statewide plan where we would send money back to the regions. But legislators who live in Hampton Roads in Northern Virginia said, Governor, we like you and we like Richmond, but in our experience, we have huge needs of congestion. And we're not sure that if there's taxes, the money will come back to us that we put in. So how about this? How about letting us have some taxes where we have taxes just in our region, but then we keep all the money and we use it for the projects that we determine are important rather than the ones that Richmond says are important. And I think, okay, I can understand why folks in the regions might want to do that. So the plans last year that the legislature passed overwhelmingly produced about $200 million a year in Hampton Roads, $300 million a year in Northern Virginia. You can see Northern Virginia, and all of you travel in these areas and know, in Northern Virginia, 81% of people experience congestion. I guess some walk to work and some bike, or take public transit, but 81% experiencing congestion. And the average congestion of a Northern Virginia worker is the equivalent of a 2-week vacation sitting in traffic. Now, if that ain't frustrating enough, 2 weeks of your vacation sitting in traffic, imagine what it is when gas is at $4 a gallon and you're running the engine while you're sitting there for 2 weeks. So we're trying to solve the congestion problems in Nova and Hampton Roads. It's similarly challenging in Hampton Roads. My proposal on the regional packages is this. Legislators in both regions have been talking about doing a 1% regional sales tax. Not on food and medicine, not on the auto title, that would be separate, but doing a 1% regional sales tax. And using all that money for the homegrown projects that they pick. And so that is my proposal. Having listened to some of the legislators, we're going to talk about that. Do a 1% regional sales tax. That would return to the regions essentially what were part of the packages last year. Just real quick. The third piece of the plan, and then I'll do a few last slides and open it up for questions, is what I call transportation change. Here's what struck me as I was putting this together. The world is really changing as far as transportation goes with gas at $4 a gallon. You know, the system that we would design with gas at $1 a gallon or $2 or even $3 a gallon is a very different system than it is with gas at $4 a gallon. I mean, who really thought we'd be standing here with gas at $4 a gallon? And yet, I got a sick feeling in my stomach that while it may come down a little bit when the summer's over, it traditionally does, we're not going to be back to gas at $2 a gallon or even $3 a gallon. In fact, if anything, I think the trend is going to continue to push gas prices up. So rather than just do it the same way we've always done it, I do think we need to think about doing things different. And so my proposal on this Transportation Change Fund, let's be bigger investors in public transit and rail, and even some different strategies like telecommuting, ride sharing, and carpooling. Let's do some things that may give people some options to work and do things without relying just on a vehicle filled with gas. And that's what this Transportation Change Fund is about. I propose to raise a fund that would be about $140 million a year statewide. I'd use 3/4 of it for rail, public transit, and alternate means like telecommuting, ride sharing, carpooling, etc. I'd use 1/4 of the money for economic development. So if in Chesterfield the county has this industrial park in Meadowville and they want to do highway access and interchanges to get more jobs in there, let's use some of the economic development money to make that happen. Or if in rural Virginia, Martinsville, I'm always dealing with Martinsville challenges and they want to bring jobs in, but the road infrastructure isn't sufficient to do it. If we can put better road or rail access to Martinsville, we can bring more jobs in. So how do I fund this Transportation Change Fund? I would propose to do it this way. Again, last year the legislature included as part of their bill what's called a grantor's tax. In Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads, they said, if you sell a piece of property, for every $100 of the sales price, you would put 40 cents into a transportation fund to use in those regions. I've taken that, which they all voted, nearly all voted for, not all, but overwhelming. I think the vote was like 90 to 10 in the House, and nearly, it was very strong, nearly unanimous in the Senate. We would, instead of 40 cents, we would take 25 cents. So off $100 of sales price, 25 cents would go into this Transportation Change Fund, and we would use 3/4 of it to really advance rail and public transit spending, use 1/4 of it for economic development projects, especially in the rural or suburban parts of the state. So that is the basic plan. If we do that change fund, you'll see this is what rail and public transit investments had been. We can dramatically increase rail and public transit, which is the future-oriented part of this. Next slide. I showed you at the start what would happen over time as this construction budget shrinks down to next to nothing and the maintenance budget goes up. If we do the plan I just proposed, instead of this dwindling red line, the construction budget is now in blue, so the construction budget can stay high as befits a state that is a growing, thriving state. We would have dollars to construct. And I might just mention, the more construction we do, the more people we're hiring. We're in a challenged economy right now. I know it's tough to talk about these revenues at a time when, times are tough, but construction and investments help stimulate the economy. I mean, you're hiring people, you're paying companies, they're spending money in their communities, And so I view this as a package that will stimulate the economy. Next slide. Let me finish with 2 slides that show you, okay, Governor, you talked about this big plan. What difference does it make to us right here? Let me tell you what this slide is. This slide has every jurisdiction in it that's part of the Richmond Transportation District in the state. And we have these districts, and they were created basically in a funny way. What were the congressional districts in the 1920s? That's how we created these districts. So the congressional districts have changed, but we keep the CTV districts about the same. But this is the Richmond district, which includes Hopewell, Prince George, and the area communities. Every dot on this map was a road project that was on the 6-year plan before this week. So the 6-year plan, every dot on here was a project that was going to be done in this region in the next 6 years. As a result of that decline in revenue, I showed you earlier how we were reducing it by $1.1 billion statewide for a variety of reasons. Any dot on here that's red is a dot that is now off the list. And any dot that's yellow is a project that is on the list, but it's pushed back. So in the 6-year plan, it's not next year, it's 3 or 4 years from now. So before we had to reduce the 6-year plan, every dot on here was green, and all these projects were going to be done in the next 6 years. But as a result of declines in revenue, the red dots are now off the 6-year plan, and the yellow dots are delayed. The green dots are still going to get done, but you see there's not a lot of green dots up there. It's mostly red and yellow. If we do the plan that I have just described to you, here's what the map looks like. Now, go back and forth a little bit. Okay, so here's before. Now, this is if we don't do anything. That's what it looks like. If we act, here's what it looks like. You'll see that most of the yellow plans have changed to green, and many of the red plans have changed to green. Now, go back to leave it there for a minute. You'll see there's still some red dots on here, even after my plan. That's because of the declines in the gas tax revenues we're seeing at the federal level. That's going to decline, and so that is going to hinder our ability to do everything that we had planned to do over the next 6 years. But each of these projects in each of these communities are important. They're important to the local officials and to the local economy and to law enforcement and others who've come and lobbied that these projects be on the list. And if we don't act, what we're going to see is, go back a slide, we're going to see that there aren't very many projects getting done. And this map, I show this everywhere I go, different regions obviously, it looks exactly the same. We're either going to be limping along and not doing very much, or we could step up to the plate, take the bull by the horns and invest. Let me just conclude and open it up for questions. This is a tough thing because asking for more money is never easy. We've looked for ways to cut both taxes. At the beginning of this year, we made a change to the state income tax so that 1/10 of Virginia workers, 140,000 people who were paying income taxes, don't have to pay anymore. We raised the minimum reporting thresholds on the income tax because times were tough. Small businesses and farms lobbied hard, and in 2006 we got rid of the estate tax. We're cutting expenses. I reduced the state budget in October by $300 million. And then in February I went back into the budget, worked with the legislature, and reduced it by another $1.4 billion over the next 2 years. So we're trying to find ways to tighten the belt and cut, but there's no way we can cut our way to better bridges. I mean, we're in a situation where if we want better transportation, we have to be willing to invest in it. And if we set all these taxes so far below what other states do and what national averages are, we basically are going to get the system we pay for. With that, I'd love to open it up and answer questions. Again, what I would ask is that if you think this is important, if you rely on transportation and believe that we've got to, if we want to be a growing state, have a growing infrastructure rather than a degrading infrastructure, I would just ask you to tell your legislature, you don't have to tell them, hey, vote for the governor's plan, but just go to Richmond in this special session, take it seriously and get something done. Let me open it up and I'll be glad to talk. Yes, please.